You don't really think about betrayal until you're laying flat on your back in a hospital bed with tubes snaking into your arms, machines beeping like some demented metronome, and death politely knocking on the edge of your pulse. I was in intensive care. Cardiac arrest. I remember the ceiling tiles more vividly than I remember the crash. The nurses hovered like ghosts. The doctors spoke in whispers, like they didn't want to wake me from a sleep I wasn't planning to survive. And my wife? She was gone. Somewhere warm, somewhere sunny. Her laughter echoed down a beach I wasn't invited to. They told me later, after I clawed my way back to the land of the living, that she'd taken a trip. Said something about needing a break. If it's serious, the doctors will call, she told my sister. Cool as a glacier. She never visited. Not once. I laid in that sterile box, staring at those god-awful tiles, and I kept thinking, this isn't how love works. You don't skip your husband's deathbed because your beachside boyfriend has reservations at a seafood shack. But there she was, toes in the sand, heart in another man's hands. Her lover, let's call him Jonas for now, since that's what his LinkedIn still says, he forgot to block me, the idiot, was with her the whole trip. My friend's cousin saw them. Sent me a photo, too. Her in that red dress I bought her on our anniversary, standing knee-deep in the surf, sipping something tropical from a coconut, while Jonas rubbed sunscreen into her back like he owned the damn world. I'd flatlined twice. Twice. They had to shock me back, chest seizing like a dying engine, while she danced under a Caribbean moon and called it healing. But here's the thing. I did come back. And I didn't forget a damn thing. The body heals slow, but the mind? It sharpens, hardens, becomes a blade if you hold the right kind of grudge. And oh, I held it. Not in a messy, loud, Hollywood way. No screaming. No confrontation. Just quiet. Cold. Strategic. 3 years passed. Long enough to let them believe I had moved on. Long enough for her to let her guard down and for Jonas to think the universe had handed him another man's life, gift-wrapped and ready for the taking. I moved out of our house after the recovery. Told her I needed space. She didn't fight it. She was already building her new life inside mine. So I let her. Rented a small place downtown. Took up consulting work. Got healthy. Got lean. Got invisible. But I watched. From a distance. Every move. Every lie. Every Sunday brunch photo she posted with him, tagging it with something cute like #newbeginnings. Every smile became a data point. Every trip they took, every mortgage adjustment, every little love note she accidentally left in the shared Google Calendar, it all went into the vault. They thought I was done, but I was just sharpening the knife. This morning, everything changed. I opened the front door just a crack, and there she was. Hair a little thinner, eyes a little hollow. Regret curled on her lips like frostbite. Please, she whispered, just let me see you. 3 years ago, I would have begged for that moment. Would have taken her hand, wept into it, and pretended love could still be revived like my body was. But not anymore. Not after what I did last night. And what she's about to lose. She stood there, arms folded across her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. I didn't say a word. Just looked at her through the half-open door like she was a stranger asking for change on a street corner. Please, she said again, softer this time. I need to talk to you. I could have laughed. Really could have. But I didn't. There's something poetic about silence. It makes people squirm more than words ever will. She wasn't used to that from me. I used to be the one chasing, explaining, forgiving. Not anymore. I shut the door. Gently. No slamming. No drama. Just a quiet little thud, the sound of a chapter ending. Let me back up. You need to understand what the 3 years between her beach holiday and this doorstep moment looked like for me. It wasn't a slow process of healing. It wasn't candles and therapy sessions. It was war. Silent. Surgical. I started by pulling away my name. Quietly took myself off the mortgage. Shifted the utilities into her hands. Just while I recover, I said. She smiled and nodded. Probably thought I was being responsible. In reality, I was carving my way out of the coffin she tried to bury me in. I changed the beneficiaries on everything. Life insurance, savings accounts, even the damn Costco membership. All under the radar. Next came the business assets. She never understood how I structured them, barely glanced at the paperwork I asked her to sign when times were good. So when I created a new trust and funneled the most valuable pieces of our shared investments into it, she didn't notice. Why would she? She was busy making heart-shaped pancakes for Jonas and giggling about home renovation plans. And Jonas? Let me tell you about that guy. You ever meet someone so smug, so slick, that even his smile feels like an insult? That's Jonas. Wore tailored shirts like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial. Drove a leased Audi he couldn't afford. Talked like he'd read half a psychology textbook and thought he was a guru. I learned everything about him. Where he worked, where he drank, who his exes were. I built a profile that would make the CIA nod in appreciation. But I didn't confront him. No, that's the amateur move. Instead, I waited. Then came the fun part, the unraveling. Jonas had a little side hustle. Real estate flipping with some sketchy licensing work. Nothing major, until I anonymously tipped off the IRS about some discrepancies. Wouldn't you know it? Audit season came early. And my wife? She lost her job. The company downsized, sure, but losing that reference letter? That glowing performance review mysteriously withdrawn? Yeah, I might have had a hand in that. See, when your HR files are left open on a shared cloud drive, and your husband used to do IT consulting for your firm, things just happen. By the second year, their perfect Instagram life was starting to crack. The vacations became staycations. The sushi dates turned into takeout. Jonas started showing up in less expensive shoes. Then I made my final move. Sold the house. Technically, she lived there. But I owned the land. Family inheritance. She never knew that. I just held on to the paperwork until it was time. A quiet transaction. One letter from the lawyer. 30 days notice. She called me screaming. Left voicemails with words I won't repeat. I saved every one. So when she showed up at my apartment this morning, whispering through the door like a ghost, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But pity is for men who haven't died once already. I didn't open the door. Instead, I slid the final envelope under it. No words, no eye contact. Just paper. Inside? A printout of her text to Jonas from 3 years ago. You won't make it through the night. Let's book the suite. Below it, one line written in black ink. I made it. She never responded to the note. Not with words, anyway. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer. She tried to file for emotional damages. Claimed I'd willfully deceived her about financial matters, that I'd orchestrated undue hardship, and caused psychological trauma through deliberate withholding of affection. Yeah, she really said withholding of affection. Like loyalty was something you rent, not earn. You know what my lawyer did? Laughed. Loudly. Said, "You sure you don't want to take this to court?" I'd love to cross-examine that circus. But I didn't want a trial. I didn't want a stage. I wanted her to drown in her own silence, surrounded by the consequences she carved with manicured fingers. Let me tell you something most people don't realize. The cruelest revenge doesn't scream. It whispers. It waits. And it hits you on a Tuesday morning when the coffee tastes like ashes and you realize no one's coming to save you, not even the man you left bleeding. Jonas, of course, tried to play hero. He emailed me. Said he understood if there were hard feelings, and that it was time to move forward as adults. Even offered to grab a drink. I replied with a 3-word message. You misspelled coward. The man didn't write back. He couldn't afford to. Not after I sent his employer a very polite, anonymous tip with attached screenshots of his offshore crypto wallet and some suspicious transaction logs. Turns out corporate finance departments don't love discovering their mid-tier analyst has been laundering funds through vacation rentals in Belize. They canned him. Frozen accounts. Seized car. I heard he had to move in with his brother. No more Audi. No more sushi. Just microwaved mac and cheese and a roommate who still listens to dubstep. As for her, she tried to pivot. Started a GoFundMe. Claimed she was the victim of a manipulative ex-partner and systemic emotional neglect. She even posted a photo of herself crying on the floor, clutching a throw pillow like it owed her alimony. Didn't take long for that to blow up in her face. I had a few burner accounts, dropped a couple of anonymous comments. Things like, didn't she vacation in Bora Bora while her husband was in the ICU? Check her tagged photos in 2021. Wasn't she with that guy Jonas the week her husband flatlined? The internet turned fast. Her sob story soured in the algorithm, buried under receipts and reality. And still, she knocked. Not every day, but often enough. Like a moth too dumb to understand the flame didn't want to be worshipped, it wanted to consume. But the thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the explosive, screaming kind of way. No, this was different. Colder. Cleaner. A sense of control I hadn't felt in years. I went to the mirror that night. Looked myself in the eye for the first time in a long while. There he was, the man she thought she'd buried. Except he wasn't dead. He was just waiting. And now? Now he was rebuilding. Because revenge, my friend, is never the end of the story. It's just the prologue to reinvention. I started waking up early. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It wasn't some motivational poster nonsense. It wasn't about grinding or manifesting. No, it was discipline. Cold. Clean. Mine. Every morning at 5:30 sharp, I ran. Through the park, past the bakery where she used to beg me to stop for cinnamon rolls, down to the river where I used to imagine us retiring someday. I ran through memories like they were fog. They didn't stop me. They barely touched me. My body had changed, shirt, scar on the chest, meds every morning, slight tremor when I was tired. But the man underneath? He was forged in a hospital bed, tested in silence, and baptized in betrayal. I didn't rebuild my life. I redesigned it. Started a new company. Small consulting firm. Just me at first. Then one intern. Then 3 clients. Then 12. She used to say I lacked ambition. Turns out all I lacked was the weight of her pulling at my heels. And here's the thing about being underestimated for years. It's a hell of a head start. While they were too busy flaunting their discount romance on Instagram, I was laying bricks. By the 3rd year, I tripled my income. Not that I flaunted it. I didn't buy a flashy car or date an Instagram model or plaster my life across social media. My revenge wasn't about proving anything to her. It was about proving everything to me. She sent a letter one afternoon. Handwritten. Classy touch, I'll give her that. Maybe Jonas had finally left. Maybe the silence was eating her alive. Maybe she was just lonely. It smelled like her perfume. The same one I used to inhale in the mornings when I held her before work, thinking forever meant something. Funny how a scent can make your stomach turn. Inside the envelope, 5 pages. Rambling apologies, half-truths dressed as revelations, and the usual chorus of, I wasn't in a good place back then. And I didn't know how to handle the stress, and he made me feel seen. Seen? I almost laughed. I was in a coma. I didn't need to be seen. I needed to be saved. I didn't respond. Didn't burn the letter. Didn't shred it. Just filed it under a folder labeled Exhibits right next to the printouts, the photos, the screenshots. Not out of malice. Out of record keeping. Every strategist needs a logbook. Then came the call. It was a Tuesday. I was reviewing a proposal when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Hello. Silence. Then, it's me. I didn't say anything. I know you probably don't want to hear my voice. She was right. But I had to try. Still, I stayed silent. Silence was power. The kind I never used to have. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued, her voice cracking slightly. But I miss who we were. I miss you. That's the thing about people like her. They miss the version of you they could control. The version they could guilt into forgiveness. The version who didn't know the truth yet. I hung up. Not because I was angry. Because I was done. But done didn't mean the story was over. Not yet. There was one more piece left on the board. One final move I'd been saving. Something that would cement the legacy of this resurrection not just in her mind, but in the mind of everyone who ever doubted what a man can become after betrayal. And it was almost time to play it. There's a certain high you get from walking into a room where everyone once pitied you, and now they can't stop staring, wondering when the hell you learned to walk like that. Confident. Clean. Untouchable. 3 years ago, I couldn't even stand without assistance. Now I was standing in a penthouse boardroom downtown, wearing a suit I paid for in cash, shaking hands with a company that used to ignore my emails. That's when it hit me. I'd spent my whole damn marriage shrinking so she wouldn't feel small. Not anymore. Revenge didn't mean setting her on fire. It meant setting myself free. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want the final move to sting. And I knew exactly how to do it. You see, while she and Jonas were busy curating their romantic little fantasy, they forgot one thing. Digital footprints are forever. And joint tax returns are practically treasure maps. Before I ever left the house, I made copies. Files, bank records, signed emails. Things she didn't know she'd left behind in her rush to play house with her beachside Romeo. And Jonas? Turns out his business ventures weren't just sloppy, they were legally shaky. So I built a case. Quietly. Thoroughly. Not to press charges. No, again, too loud, too obvious. I sent a package. Anonymous. Manila envelope. No return address. Straight to Jonas's newest employer. The one he lied to about his business ethics on that charming little resume. Inside, everything. Fake shell companies. Backdated invoices. One particular email thread where my darling ex-wife forwarded confidential info from my firm during the tail end of our marriage, trying to impress Jonas with insider tips. Oh, she played dirty? I played smarter. 3 weeks later, Jonas was gone. Job terminated. Public statement from the company. We hold our staff to the highest ethical standards. Translation, we're not syncing with you, pal. Now here's the delicious part. My ex didn't even know why it happened. Jonas never told her. Couldn't admit he'd been outplayed by the man they thought they'd left for dead. He left town. And her? She started calling again. Desperate. I didn't pick up, but I listened to every voicemail. Not for nostalgia. No, I was listening for something else. That turning point. That moment when the mask drops. When regret stops sounding like sorrow and starts sounding like survival. It came one night, around 2 a.m. Her voice was hoarse. Drunk maybe. Or just broken. I know you hate me. I hate me, too. I thought Jonas was a way out, but he was just a detour to hell. I don't want money. I just want peace. I want to remember who I used to be with you. Please. Click. I didn't save that message. Didn't need to. Because now it was time. Not for revenge. Not for payback. But for the legacy move. I wasn't just going to erase the past. I was going to rewrite it. With me at the center, standing tall, while her little empire of sand collapsed behind her. I'd been patient long enough. 3 years of silence. Of calculated steps. Of letting her think I was some shadow licking my wounds in a basement somewhere. Too broken to bite back. But now I was the man they warned her about. The one who doesn't yell, doesn't beg, just acts. I started with the foundation she'd helped rot, our old social circle. You know how small-town whispers travel faster than broadband? Yeah, I used to hate it. Now, I weaponized it. I attended a wedding, the first one in years. Not just any wedding. Our friends. The couple who used to double date with us, who went radio silent after my hospital stay like betrayal was contagious. But now I had a new suit, a new watch, a new posture. I walked in alone. I left with every pair of eyes wondering what she'd been thinking letting me go. Word spread fast. He looks good. What's he doing these days? Didn't she run off with what was his name? Jonas. I let the whispers work. Like termites in the walls of her carefully curated image. People started reaching out to me. Ex-friends. Co-workers. Even her cousin. The one who used to call me too intense. Funny how success has a way of rewriting your personality from obsessive to focused. Then came the event. Annual Business Leadership Conference. She always wanted to attend. Back then, I was too sick, too tired, too busy trying to keep the lights on. Now, I was the keynote speaker. I didn't flaunt it. Just stood behind that podium. Clear voice, steady hands. Outlined my blueprint for resilience and reinvention. No mention of her. No bitterness. Just results. But oh, I saw her. Back row. Wearing sunglasses indoors. Like shame had a glare. She waited until the crowd thinned out. I knew she would. I stood by the table, shaking hands. Signing copies of the book I'd released 6 months earlier. The Rise After Ruin. She approached slowly. You look, she started. I let her trail off. I smiled. Not warm. Not cruel. Just done. You read the book? I asked. She nodded. Twice. Of course she did. It's powerful, she said. I cried. I believed her. Not for the reasons she thought, but because somewhere in those pages, she saw herself and realized the villain wasn't wearing a cape or swinging a bat. The villain had her perfume. I'm glad it helped, I said, before turning to greet the next person in line. She didn't linger. That was the last time I saw her in person, but it wasn't the last time she felt me. See, the real legacy move wasn't just rising. It was documenting the rise. The book? It wasn't therapy. It was a warning. A subtle, scalpel-sharp message to anyone who ever thought a man's silence meant surrender. Because I didn't just survive her. I built a life so far beyond her reach. She couldn't even throw shade without burning herself. And that was the justice no courtroom could offer. After the conference, I expected quiet. What I got was a ripple. Emails, DMs, even a few letters. People, strangers, reaching out to say my story hit them somewhere deep. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. That's what made it dangerous to her. I didn't name names in the book. Didn't mention the red dress. Didn't call out Jonas or describe the coconut drinks or her tan lines or that godforsaken text she sent the night I almost died. But they knew. Our old circle. Her coworkers. The friends who drifted, the ones who'd stayed suspiciously neutral during the fallout. They read between the lines. You could feel it in the way they stopped tagging her in anything that smelled like success. She was radioactive now. And the kicker? I never had to say a word. She tried. Oh, she tried. A blog post. A few cryptic tweets. Something about people weaponizing their trauma and false narratives from bitter men. But no one bit. She forgot something critical. Once people believe you've stepped on someone while they were dying, everything you say afterward just sounds like excuses wrapped in lipstick. Then came the message from her mother. We hadn't spoken in years. She never approved of me, even before the hospital. Said I was too serious, not fun enough. Probably thought Jonas was a fresh breeze through a stale marriage. But this message? I'm sorry. I was wrong. She's not well. I wish I'd seen it sooner. I didn't respond. I wasn't about to become a rehab project for a family that watched me bleed and turned away. But that message? It confirmed what I already knew. She was unraveling. And when people unravel, they reach for anchors, any anchor. Even the ones they let go of in high tide. A few days later, my assistant buzzed in. Said a woman was asking to see me. No appointment. No name. I didn't even need to ask. I walked out the back. Didn't want to hear her voice again. Not after that night in the ICU when my sister whispered to me through tears, she's not coming. She left with him this morning. Said she needed a break. I remembered that moment. Sharp. Burned in. So I walked out, got in my car, and left her standing in the lobby with whatever speech she'd rehearsed in the mirror. She sent one last letter a week later. No perfume this time. No lipstick stain on the flap. Just her handwriting shaky now. Smaller. You won. I get it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to stop. Please. But I hadn't done anything. That was the beauty of it all. I didn't need to destroy her. She did that all by herself. All I did was survive better than expected. She tried one more time. I should have known. Regret doesn't go quietly, not when it's been pampered its whole life. It comes back limping, makeup smeared, excuses trembling in its throat like apologies are some kind of currency that can buy back lost years. This time, she didn't come to my office. She came to my building, where I lived. I saw her through the peephole, hair tied back, sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, no makeup. Just standing there with her hands in the pocket like she had every right in the world to occupy that space again. Please, she whispered. Just let me see you. Same words as before. But this time, there was no anger in me. No sting. Just a quiet, resolute absence. Like looking at a photograph of someone who died in a war you don't remember fighting. I leaned my head against the door. Not enough for her to hear me. Just enough to feel how final this was. And then I spoke. Quietly. Clearly. You're looking for a version of me that doesn't exist anymore. I didn't wait for a response. Didn't need one. I stepped away from the door. She stayed there for a while. I could hear her breathing. Could almost feel the weight of everything she wanted to say pressing against the wood like her palms. And then, footsteps. She left. I didn't watch her go. Instead, I turned to the shelf beside my kitchen table, pulled down the last box I kept sealed. Inside, the hospital wristband. A photo of us from a vacation years ago, back when I still believed in forever. And the letter she never sent me after the ICU. Yeah, I got it. Later. From her sister. Never opened it until now. I slid it out. Her handwriting was neater back then. Still full of the illusion that intentions were enough. I'm sorry. I just couldn't face you like that. I was scared. Scared. The irony? I wasn't scared. Not when I flatlined. Not when the machine screamed. Not when the doctors pumped electricity into my chest like I was a corpse worth reviving. No. The only time I was scared was lying there, waking up, realizing she wasn't coming. That fear? That's what turned into this. Not rage. Not bitterness. Not even betrayal. Abandonment. The kind that drills itself into your bones and changes your DNA. I folded the letter. Put it back in the box. Closed the lid for good. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No dreams. No ghosts. Just quiet. And for the first time, it didn't feel like silence was punishment. It felt like peace. There's a shift that happens when you stop running from your past and start walking into your future like you own the damn land. It was subtle at first. The way people looked at me in meetings. The way they listened when I spoke, not just heard, but leaned in. Like they knew there was weight behind my words now. Not theory. Not fluff. Experience. Pain's a brutal teacher, but damn if it doesn't produce the sharpest minds. I hired staff. Built out the company. Moved into a real office, not flashy, but high floor, clean lines, a view of the river. The same river I used to run past every morning, gasping for breath, wondering if I was ever going to feel like a man again. Now I watched it from behind glass, sipping espresso I didn't have to budget for. That wasn't success. That was freedom. And the book? That wasn't a one-off. It sparked something bigger. Speaking gigs. Podcast interviews. A mini-documentary. People weren't just curious, they were hungry. Hungry to understand how someone could be gutted by betrayal, left for dead, and not only survive, but ascend. The world loves a comeback story. But mine? It wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about proving me right. One afternoon, I was sitting in my office, reviewing contracts. My assistant buzzed in. "You've got a visitor." Says you know him. Jonas. I looked up, blinked once. That name hadn't echoed in these walls in months. "Send him away," I said, almost reflexively. She paused. "He said he's not here to apologize. Just to deliver something." Now that piqued my interest. I told her to send him in. He walked in like a man wearing a suit 2 sizes too big for the occasion. Shoulders hunched. Skin pale. Hair thinning. Whatever cocky sheen he'd once polished to perfection, it had flaked off. He held a folder. Dropped it on the desk. "I'm out," he said. I raised an eyebrow. Out of the city. Out of her life. Out of money. She's not well. Thought you should know." I didn't respond. Just stared at the folder. "She kept everything," he added. "Photos. Cards. Even your hospital records." Like she was punishing herself. "I thought you'd want this." Or, I don't know. Maybe she thought you would. He turned to go. Stopped at the door. "You won," he said. "I still don't know how you pulled it off. But, you won." And then he was gone. I didn't open the folder. Didn't need to. That wasn't a trophy. That was a eulogy. Later that night, I dropped it in the fireplace and watched it burn. Quiet. Controlled. That part of the story? Dead and buried. The man she betrayed? He died in the ICU. The man who rose? He didn't need closure. He was the closure. You ever hear a door slam in the distance and realize you didn't even flinch? That's what peace feels like. Not fireworks. Not applause. Just the absence of noise you forgot you were living with. That constant hum of tension, suspicion, what-ifs and why-me's gone. That's where I was now. Every morning started the same. 6 a.m. Black coffee. City skyline. Silence so pure it felt earned. Then the gym. Then work. Meetings, deals, phone calls with people who used to brush me off before I had a name that meant anything. And then, writing. Yeah, I kept writing. Not out of pain anymore, but purpose. Book 2 was already in the works. This time, not about betrayal, not about loss, but about creation, reinvention, turning ruin into blueprint. I titled it, From ICU to CEO. It sounded dramatic, sure, but every word in that title was a scar I earned. I was halfway through a chapter on emotional discipline when I got a letter in the mail. Not from her. From a young guy in Texas. Early 30s. Said he read my first book while going through chemo. Wife cheated on him in the middle of it. Thought he was going to lose everything. Said reading my story gave him a roadmap. That one hit me hard. I wrote back. Told him I wasn't some guru. Just a man who decided that being destroyed once was enough. That I didn't owe anyone forgiveness if it meant betraying myself again. That survival isn't noble until you build something with it. After that, the letters started piling in. Not fan mail. Testimonies. People dragging themselves from the wreckage. People whose partners ghosted them after miscarriages, job losses, cancer, bankruptcy. All of them chasing that one question. How do you come back from something that was supposed to kill you? I told them the truth. You don't come back as who you were. You come back sharper, colder, calmer. And that scares the hell out of the people who expected you to stay broken. She reached out one last time after the Jonas visit. I knew she would. That kind of regret doesn't sleep. This time, it was just a postcard. No return address. No signature. Just a photo of the sea. The same place she'd gone with him when I was in ICU. On the back, for words in her handwriting. I see it now. That was it. No plea. No apology. Just an admission, small and sharp like glass in your shoe. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because by the time she saw it, I wasn't even in the same galaxy anymore. And her recognition? That wasn't a gift. It was late. The kind of late that locks you out of the life you could have had if you just stayed when it mattered. By now, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving out loud. The second book launched to numbers I didn't expect. Not a bestseller on day one. No streamers and champagne, just momentum. Real, steady momentum. People started referring to me as the guy who came back from the dead and built something better. I didn't correct them, because that's exactly what I did. I started getting invited to speak, not just business conferences, but hospitals, rehab centers, even a few prisons. Places filled with people who thought the worst thing that happened to them was also going to be the last thing that defined them. I told them the truth. That grief and betrayal don't destroy you. They strip you. They take everything fake, every excuse, every delusion, every person who said, "I love you," with a clock ticking behind their smile, and they burn it away. What's left? Only what's real. Only you. And the best part? You get to rebuild yourself without permission. One night, after speaking at a recovery clinic, a guy, late 40s, broken posture, too much life behind his eyes, pulled me aside. Said, "Man, your story? That's my story. Different names. Same wreckage." Then he paused. Except I stayed. I forgave her. Gave her everything. Thought I was being a good man. And I asked. He gave a half laugh, half sob. She left anyway. 3 years later. For someone younger. Said I never really healed. That's when I realized something ugly and true. Sometimes, staying makes you a target. Not a hero. Not a saint. Just easy. That night, I added a new chapter to the book. A brutal one. One that said what no therapist or priest will dare admit. You're not a bad person for walking away from someone who left you in your darkest hour. You're not cruel for closing a door that only opened when they needed something. You're not heartless for healing without them. You're smart. And you're done bleeding for people who only knew how to love you when it was convenient. A month later, I got invited to sit on the board of a nonprofit that supports people recovering from medical trauma and abandonment. Perfect fit. They asked if I had any suggestions for outreach campaigns. I pitched a simple tagline. You're not broken. You're becoming. It stuck. They printed it on everything. Flyers, shirts, mugs. The phrase took off. And that's when I felt it. The moment I'd been crawling towards since the ICU. Purpose. Not revenge. Not survival. Not just success. But purpose. The kind that outlives you. The kind that turns every ounce of pain into fuel for someone else's escape. I wasn't haunted anymore. I was hunted by people chasing the blueprint I'd carved through blood and betrayal. And this time, I didn't run. I led. A strange thing happens when the storm passes and you're still standing. People start treating you like a lighthouse. Even the ones who once left you to drown. I wasn't just being asked to speak anymore. I was being sought out. Podcast interviews. Brand partnerships. Private coaching for executives trying to claw their way back from ruin. And I didn't change who I was to fit into those rooms. I made those rooms change for me. They expected a suit-wrapped cliché with platitudes about moving on. What they got was a man with scars and silence, and a clear line drawn between forgiveness and foolishness. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a leadership seminar hosted by a major firm. High-end venue. Polished crowd. They sat with their arms crossed, skeptical until I told them the ICU story. I didn't embellish. Just laid it bare. While I was dying, my wife went on vacation with her lover. She said, if it's serious, the doctors will call. They never called. But I lived anyway. You could hear the dammer stiffen. 3 years later, she came back. Asked to see me. Said she wanted peace. Pause. I already had it. By the time I stepped off that stage, people were standing. Not because I said something flowery, but because I said something true, the kind of truth they'd buried in their own lives, afraid to dig up. Afterward, a woman approached me. Early 30s, sharp suit, trembling fingers. She said the same thing to me, she whispered. About the hospital. About the break. And I thought it was my fault. It never is. That's the ugly magic of betrayal. It always makes you feel like the villain in a story they wrote. But not anymore. We were taking the pen back. That night, I got home and found another letter in the mail. Different handwriting. Her sister. Inside was a single photograph. It was her. My ex-wife. Sitting alone on a bench by the sea. The same sea she once ran to with Jonas, wearing that red dress, sipping from that damn coconut while I was hooked up to machines. On the back, her sister had written, "She comes here a lot. Says it's where everything became real. Thought you should know." I didn't respond. Because here's the truth. I wasn't angry anymore. Not even cold. I was untouchable. Not in some arrogant, chest-beating way, but in the kind of way that comes from climbing out of your own grave and building a garden on top of it. She could visit that sea every day for the rest of her life. But it wouldn't wash her clean. Not of what she did. Not of what she lost. Because what she lost was me. And the man she left behind? He wasn't just alive. He was unreachable. Some people spend their whole lives chasing closure. Like it's a destination. Like if they just say the right words, or hear the right apology, something inside them will finally exhale. But closure isn't a door someone else shuts for you. It's the moment you realize you don't need the door anymore. I was standing in my office one morning early, quiet, golden sunlight streaking in through the blinds, when I realized I hadn't thought about her in weeks. Not actively, not obsessively, not with anger or sadness, or any of that low-burning static betrayal leaves behind. Just hadn't thought of her. And that, right there, that was the real victory. I'd outgrown the story. That afternoon, I met with a publisher about a third book. They wanted something different. A shift. A move away from memoir and into movement. They said I was becoming a symbol. I said, I didn't come this far to become anything but a man with his hands back on the wheel. They liked that. So did I. We titled it Unreachable: How to Outgrow the People Who Left You Behind. Clean. Direct. True. It launched with an essay I'd written in one take. No edits. There will be people who leave you in the valley and think they're entitled to climb with you once you reach the mountain. Smile at them. Wave from the summit. But never throw down a rope. They weren't climbing. They were waiting. By now, she was gone from social media. Vanished. Digital silence. Maybe she'd moved. Maybe she changed her name. I didn't care. But people sent me whispers. A job she didn't get. A community that politely stopped inviting her. Old friends who quietly disconnected, one by one. She was still alive. But she was shrinking. And not because I punished her. But because the world finally saw what I had survived and respected the man I'd become enough to stop pretending she hadn't played a role in trying to bury him. I got another letter. This one from her former best friend. The one who used to roll her eyes when I said I needed rest during recovery. The one who'd laughed too loud in the background of that video where she toasted Jonas on New Year's. No? She was starting a women's support group, she said. Wanted me to speak. I didn't respond. Let them wrestle with their own ghosts. I had no intention of exorcising hers. By this point, I wasn't healing anymore. I was building. I was mentoring. I was carving spaces for people who'd been lied to, abandoned, gaslit, and discarded, and who needed a blueprint that wasn't shrink-wrapped in pity. I gave them that blueprint, step by step, scar by scar. Not because I was better, but because I had been broken and I chose to rebuild with truth. And the truth was this. She left me when I was dying. Now I was living in a way she'd never understand. I was invited to a university to give a guest lecture, Psychology and Resilience. They wanted a speaker who could talk about betrayal not as theory, but as experience. Who could explain how survival wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare. The auditorium was full. Students, professors, a few journalists in the back. They introduced me with my bio. Author, consultant, CEO. No mention of survivor. No sob story. Just the man I'd become. I walked out onto that stage like it belonged to me, because it did. Not because I conquered it, but because I earned it. Let's get one thing clear, I said. This isn't about bitterness. If you're here to hear how I got revenge, you're in the wrong room. Pause. Let it breathe. This is about how you make peace with being left behind, and then build a life so far ahead, they'll need binoculars to even spot you. You could feel the room shift. Silence, but not empty. Silence like oxygen had been pulled from the air. I told them the story. The ICU. The beach. The message she left with her suitcase still warm from packing. But I didn't stop there. I told them what came after. The pain. The strategy. The slow, surgical dismantling of what once defined me, and the deliberate construction of something better. You don't have to scream to win, I said. You just have to outlast the echo. Afterward, a young woman came up to me. Said she found out her fiancé was cheating while she was undergoing chemotherapy. His excuse? He didn't know how to cope. I just nodded. Told her what someone should have told me back then. Some people will set your house on fire just to feel warm for a moment. She cried. Not broken sobs. Just release. The kind you feel when someone finally hands you a name for the thing you've been carrying alone. That was the real legacy. Not the book deals. Not the business growth. Not even the clean silence that replaced the chaos. It was that moment. That transfer of weight from one back to another. A map, folded and passed on. And somewhere, I knew she knew about it. Not directly, but whispers float. She'd hear about the lecture. See a clip go viral. Someone would mention the book again at a brunch she wasn't invited to. The bookstore would put my face in the front window, and she'd pretend not to see it on the walk home. That was the poetic part. She was haunted by the ghost of a man she didn't kill, but sure as hell tried to. Except he didn't just come back. He built monuments. And the worst part for her? Not that I was happy, but that I never needed her to become it.